selected among the 20, virologists, in the world to come to both the University of Maryland School of Medicine and the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. The write-up in the email reads that, we've seen your CV, we've gone through your proposal, and that, they are so much impressed, that my CV was excellent. And I was like, wow, that, experts in the US telling me my CV was excellent. So I'm highly delighted. And to, go straight to your response as to what I plan to do with the award, I need to tell you straight from my heart that I'm going to do so much about the award. Immediately after the course, we'll be at the, initially I was at the University of Chicago, Agoni National Laboratory for a bioinformatics training for bacteria and for viruses. Talking about influenza, talking about SARS-CoV-2, talking about measles, talking about Lassa fever virus, that is endemic in Nigeria and in Africa. So immediately after the training at the University of Chicago, we'll be moving straight to the University of Maryland School of Medicine, and likewise the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health for the Global Virus Network Award. So the first one was another, training entirely at the University of Chicago. It has got nothing to do with the Global Virus Network. So I won the two of them. I got the invite for the two of them, almost at the same time. So I'm currently in Texas with my family. I must thank them so much. A lot of them, I'll talk about them, towards the end of the interview. But immediately after my sojourn here in Texas, I'll be moving to University of Maryland, to start the Global Virus Network, award on course training on translational virology. And what is that all about? I must tell you that that has got a lot of things to do with learning the basics, the translational research as far as viruses are concerned, talking about the genomics, the metagenomics, the theory, the practical, the collaboration. And the very interesting thing about the award is that we'll be meeting experts from the National Institute of Health here in the United States, from the American government. We'll be meeting them, we'll be meeting policymakers, we'll be meeting the likes of renowned Professor Robert Gallo, who discovered HIV. I'm going to be standing live with him. We're going to take a snapshot, and I'm sure I will share that with you, in the next couple of days. So I'll be meeting all of those renowned professors. So what do I plan to do with them back home? Number one, I'm going to appreciate the university, the Lagos University, the vice chancellor. She has been supportive each time I tell her about my scholarship. She always say, "Oh, approve, let him move. This guy is doing well, let him move." She always give me the approval, because if the university declined that, "Oh, you are going nowhere," I may not be able to come around. So I'm going to appreciate the university by doing the following. Number one, I'm going to interact, and train faculty members, colleagues. I'll be doing so much to enhance, the capacity, the support for my colleagues, especially the younger colleagues. I'll go a long way in training them, so much, about what we've learned, what we can do as far as our laboratories, are concerned, as far as surveillance. Because the major problem we have in Africa, in Nigeria, has to do with, surveillance. The avian influenza, the measles virus, the Lassa fever virus, the Ebola that ravaged the whole of Africa in recent time, and several of those viruses, including the monkeypox. We need to do active surveillance. Once we do active surveillance, from the animals to the human to the hospital patients, we need to see what is happening, in mosquitoes, yellow fever, the West Nile, the dengue, hemorrhagic fever virus. We need to investigate all of these viruses, do active surveillance, go to the hospitals, take samples from the patient, do sentinel surveillance, and do prompt diagnosis so that we can save lives of our patients in the hospitals, healthy individuals within the environment. We need to test them. We need to find out. Once we are able to isolate cases, that will go a long way in saving the country from the sporadic and the sudden outbreak that often occur without any preparation. With surveillance, we can tell the government, oh, we've been able to find this virus in animals. We need to be careful. People must stop eating the bush meat. People must stop going to the farm to run after the games, the monkeys, the bats, the chimpanzees, the rest of those animals in the wild. We must ensure there is a limit to how people get across to all of these animals so that they are not infected. It is when they are infected, they now come back to the community to infect their family members. Then we need to talk about mosquitoes. Mosquitoes alone transmits a lot of those viruses. Talk about yellow fever, talk about West Nile, talk about chikungunya, talk about dengue, hemorrhagic fever virus. All of these viruses I've just mentioned are transmitted by mosquitoes alone. And the mosquitoes are all over, in our drainages. People don't clean. We need to talk about our people at the level of the community, do community engagement, to ensure people are well enlightened. Then back to the faculty, the PhD students, I'm going to go a long way. Currently I have 2 of them, in my lab. I'm going to go a long way to train them well, to talk to them, to make sure whatever research they intend to do, they can learn so much from whatever training, from whatever knowledge I would have acquired, from both the training at the University of Chicago and likewise the University of Maryland School of Medicine and the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. Then back to the master students and likewise the undergraduate, the bachelors, that we teach a lot of courses on daily basis. The translational virology at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and the Johns Hopkins School of Public Health is going to go a long way to enhance my capacity in terms of training. We need to go back, redesign our curriculum at the National University Commission. We need to start talking to the government, the federal government. We need to redesign a lot of this curriculum to modern day techniques across the world. All over the world now, people no longer talk about all of those archaic curriculum. We should be talking about bioinformatic tools. We should be talking about phylogenetic, phylogenomics. We should be talking about metagenomics. We should be talking about molecular virology, molecular biology. These are modern things that people are doing all over the world, and that will go a long way to assist. So we've been doing well, as far as Nigeria is concerned, but we need to do more to ensure that faculty members, students in the university, people in the community are giving the best as far as the training, and the knowledge that will have been acquired from the training is concerned. So over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulaziz. That is actually very comprehensive. You came prepared for this. And it didn't look like your proposal, you must have added all of these things, the benefits or the impact you intended to make with this achievement. But then I want to ask, it's not the first time we see Nigerians making such feats abroad, but then we lose them over to something we call brain drain. And I'm worried. Of course, you already promised that you'll be returning to Nigeria, starting from LASU, from the faculty, trickling down to the department, from the postgraduate back to the undergraduate. I'm so impressed about that, because you really want to give back to the society that gave you the platform. So I must say kudos. But then I want to talk about the brain drain. I mean, but even before I talk about that, let us first break it down to layman's knowledge. We are talking medical terminologies here. We're talking microbiology, we're talking virology. A lot of people may not really appreciate it because, this is, for instance, we are live on Facebook. Most of the people who are directly affected by the topics or this subject we are discussing right now do not even understand that they are the ones we are talking about, especially their health. So, and they are daily exposed. This is tropical region, for instance, and you talked about monkeypox, you talked about Lassa fever, you talked about a lot of things that are prevalent that are pandemic. And then, so bringing it down for everybody to understand, if you want to take a step backward from the classroom mode, how would you comment on the prevalence of any of these pandemics in Nigeria? For instance, talking about you gave instance of the wild meats we access, like the monkey, the bushmeat, and the rest of them. But a lot of Nigerians will say, no, we eat it every time and there is no such thing. That wherever this outbreak is coming from, that people need to go and they liken it to spiritual causes, you know? They relate
Exactly.
it to, so if you want to bring it down to layman's understanding, we are talking microbiology, we're talking virology, we're talking bacteria, we're talking different things. The prevalence of it in Africa. And remind you, sir, recently when we talked about the outbreak and the COVID-19, Nigerians believe that because we're in tropical region, our weather does not allow for all these things to be able to spread. That because we have sun, that we are at advantage for this bacteria not to be able to spread, including Ebola. They said the day Ebola entered Nigeria was the day it ended in the world. And I just want you to make a comment about that. Our weather, our peculiar weather in Africa, vis-a-vis this global virus, how would you comment on the prevalence in Nigeria, for instance, as we speak?
Okay, thank you very much. So to start from the first one you mentioned about, that we need to actually come down to the level of our people. So the knowledge acquired, is going to translate into the community. People need to understand that we need to do more, like I mentioned earlier on, for our people to understand what we are talking about, is that a lot of germs, you find children with rashes all over their body. For instance, for measles, for monkeypox, for measles, for instance, we talk about the Koplik spots. Koplik spots is that red rash, red spotted rash that usually come up, on the skin of babies. You will see the babies crying, seriously. Then for monkeypox, you will see the same, rash that is even much more, thick, that is even bigger than that of the measles.
Present in the babies, yeah.
Exactly. Then for chikungunya, for instance, you will see people complain of joint pain. Oh, they have been bitten by mosquito. They will say, oh, my body is aching me, my joint is paining me. Then for yellow fever, you will see people with their eyes turning yellowish, and that's why it is called yellow fever virus. That mosquitoes transmit majority of these viruses. So for our people to really understand what we are saying, what I'm saying there is that people must learn to ensure the environment is tidied up. We clean our drainages, we cut the grasses. For Lassa fever virus, for instance, in Lassa, and the same thing goes for Ebola. People will be bleeding. You will see patients in the hospitals, they'll be bleeding from their mouth, from their nose, from their ears, from their eyes. They'll be bleeding from all the openings, in their body. So that is, you can talk about viral hemorrhagic fever already, like Lassa. So what transmits Lassa? We talk about the Mastomys natalensis, the multimammate rats, the bushmeat. That was why I talked about bushmeat. In African language, they call it Eron Igbe, Okete. So people must learn. And what is the problem in Edo State? What is the problem in Anambra, in Bauchi, in Ondo, in Ekiti, in Ogun? People spread their cassava. Paki, their cassava, they will cut the cassava, they will spread it, on a nylon or something, by the bush side. The rats will go there, they will feed from those cassava, and when people fry, they fry them thinking that they will kill the germs. But in the process of frying, the frying sometimes is not enough to destroy the germs.
Wow.
So when they now drink the gari, when they now eat the food, they get infected. People will start bleeding. They will say, oh, it is like you said, you were right. People will say, it is the witches and the wizard. That is not correct. They will say, oh, somebody with yellow fever, somebody with joint pain, that, even the religious, in the religious settings, the religionists will say, oh, it is the witches, it is this, they need deliverance and all of that. It is not true. All of these things are caused by germs. So our people need to be very, very careful to ensure their environment is clean. The rats, are killed. The bushes are well cut. The drainages are well cleaned. They don't keep stagnant water that will allow mosquito to breed. And that when we are getting to evening time, people must learn to wear long sleeve, clothes that can cover their hands, long skirts and what have you. People see me on campus, I wear leather socks to ensure that I'm not bitten by mosquitoes. So all of these are part of the way we can break it down to make our people understand, some of the effects. You will see people even giving birth to children with small head. We call it microcephaly. It is Zika virus. It is transmitted by mosquito. A lady will give birth, a pregnant woman, when she's infected, she will give birth to a baby because the virus attacks the encephalon, the lining, the meninges, the lining of the brain. It will not allow the brain to be developed. So the baby will come out with normal body, but a small head, like your like your hair, like the hand when folded together. And the people in the village will say, oh, come and see, it is the witches. Oh, meanwhile, it is Zika virus. So pregnant women must be shielded. They must use mosquito treated net. They must sleep under the mosquito treated net. They must ensure that they are not exposed to mosquitoes. They must not go to environment where mosquitoes are highly common or endemic. So all of these are ways we can explain to people in the community in a low man's language for them to really understand what we are talking about. So the viruses are all over. So now about the SARS-CoV-2 that you mentioned. Yes, we are so lucky that because of our environment, because of the genetic inherent factors that virologists, immunologists, scientists, the clinicians are all studying across the world. We are looking at what are some of these factors. Yes, we talk about the high temperature in the tropic, in the temperate region. We talk about our immunological factor. We talk about our genetic makeup. We talk about a lot of factors that we have to mention. Yes, we're lucky that some of these factors played into our well-being, and that we're not able to report so much as high as number of prevalence that were recorded in other parts of the world. So all of these are still currently being studied by virologists, by immunologists across the world to see that what are those what are those factors that actually supported us, that assisted us, to the point that we're not able to have so much. Then another factor is the issue of the youthful population that we have in Africa, that we have in Nigeria, for instance, that assisted us to a large extent compared to the elderly population that were recorded, that we had in Italy, for instance. A lot of personality, a lot of population died in Europe because of aged population across a lot of those cities. Then there are some factors that are common in this part of the world that we do not have so much in our parts. For instance, we can talk about underlying factors, the comorbidity, that are usually recorded here, the issue of diabetics, issue of smoking, issue of hypertension, issue of HIV/AIDS. These are underlying factors, diseases that we do not have so much in that part. Obesity is another factor. But for us in Africa, there are people, we are so lucky with herbs, medicinal plants, that are currently now being studied, that have this bioactive component that are assisting us to keep our immunity going. So these are some of the factors that also assisted us to an extent. But notwithstanding, a lot of them have not been proven scientifically. Studies are ongoing to ensure that these are actually validated. But the most critical thing is that we just need to be careful to ensure that. Yes, I've mentioned the temperature, the temperate region, in that part of the world, in Africa, for instance, the high temperature across, different cities, across different countries, regions and sub-regions, in Africa as a continent. So all of these factors, to an extent also played, to have supported our low prevalence, in recent time. But notwithstanding, we still have our own challenges. For instance, the Lassa fever. Lassa fever was first discovered. In fact, it was named after the village, the place of first isolation. It was discovered in Lassa village in present-day Borno State, and that's why it was named, Lassa fever virus. So to let you know, Lassa fever is endemic, in our country. It is part of us in Africa. These are our own common, diseases that we just need to, do so much. We need to work on, to ensure that we end up, recording as low prevalence in that part of the world.
Thank you so much, Doctor. But while talking about the Lassa fever, you mentioned that some people spread their cassava on a nylon and then rats will just encroach on them. And they will think that after frying it, it kills the germs. And that is where I want you to quickly make a little remark on. People believe that once you boil your livestock or once you put them through cooking, they automatically remove the germs for you. In this case, would you say that we are not doing enough? Will cooking not, or boiling or frying not remove bacteria? Will it not kill it for us?
Yes, thank you. You are right. High temperature, really help in destroying the viruses. For instance, the envelope viruses do not want alcohol.
Okay.
They degrade their envelope. They do not want ethanol. And the rest. We lyse them. We destroy them in the laboratory. Using ethanol. Propanol and the rest of them as our disinfecting or killing agent. Then likewise, high temperature go to a large extent in destroying the viral genome, the envelope, protein, the envelope, the capsid of the viruses, and that render them inactive or inactivated. So you are very correct. When eating is well done, when you eat, we destroy a lot of those. But in this case, for instance, the yellow gari in Africa, the yellow gari is not usually, well fried. Compared to the Ijebu gari, for instance. Okay. The Ijebu gari, and some other gari that are well fermented, and well fried are usually, able to destroy the viral entities. But for yellow gari, that is just within a short while, it is removed from the fire. So that may not be enough to destroy the virus, and when people go back to take them, they get infected, and we record a high number of morbidity and mortality. So, but in actual sense, if the eating is well done, the cooking is well done, then such individuals, but never mind, people even consume some of those things live. They mash them, after the mashing, they soak them, they heat them live. People use them in preparing fufu and the rest without adequate cooking. So, but if it is well cooked, well done, well eaten, then we can be sure that the heat will have destroyed. But never mind, we have a lot of microbial entities that are also thermolabile. Thermolabile means that they can withstand high temperature. So I think what is key is that we do not want to give chances. Is for us to ensure that we destroy those viruses that are transmitted by rats. We call them the roboviruses. Robovirus, that is rodent-borne viruses. Okay. So those ones that are transmitted by insects, we call them arboviruses. Okay. So both arboviruses and roboviruses, we do not want them in Africa. We do not want them in the environment. Like the government, of the United States is doing so much here. You wouldn't see any rats, any insects or what have you, around. They've gone to a large extent in ensuring that the environment, are well cleaned. Fumigation is done periodically. Trimming of trees are done periodically. Cutting of grasses are, done periodically. The drainages are sealed up, underground. No one see stagnant water or something, around. People clean. There are people that are employed. A lot of our youths on the street in Africa can be employed, in cleaning services. Companies, can be, brought in to do so much as far as the environment is concerned. So all of that we still need to do, in Africa to ensure that things, are orderly. But in actual sense, like you said, if the temperature is so high, it's enough to destroy, the viruses and other microbial entities, including bacteria. So over to you.
You've really broken it down, and I'm sure people can understand and enjoy it. So, but before I let you go, Doctor, we were talking. I mentioned also brain drain. The last time I was at Lagos University,
It was because you raised the issue of.
Our doctors are no longer around. Most of them are. In fact, they said there were only 2 resident doctors left the last time I visited. And I'm so.
No, that is not correct. I find only 2 resident doctors in Nigeria. A lot of people are still around, but you are actually correct by saying that people, have been moving. There is mobility of labor. There is nothing anyone can do, over that. The International Labour Organization, ILO, approves mobility of labor, across the world. People can move from the United States to Africa. People can move from Africa, to other parts of the world. But notwithstanding, what is key is basic amenities, infrastructure, the tools to work. I was discussing with somebody recently. I have a lot of my students here in the United States, in Alabama, in Indiana, in Wisconsin, and several other, universities around, in Texas, here in Maryland. Students are doing well, but I can tell you a lot of them will never come back home because we do not have the facilities to keep them. In fact, even myself, I can tell you, if I have my way, I will come back. But it's just that a lot of us may not do that, because of the love that we have, and the support we've been enjoying, from our mentors, our professors. For instance, my professors in my faculty, my dean, my professors in my department, who are also international scholars. A lot of them have been helping. They've been supportive, at the College of Medicine, at the university at large. At the management level, we're getting some support. So that may keep some of us back home. But in the real sense, we need to do more. The infrastructures are not there. The facilities I'm currently enjoying here, I do not have them back home. The kind of environment I stay, the serenity, the peaceful environment, the kind of facilities that have been provided for me. To now talk about
the equipment are there,
to now talk about the equipment or the tools. Exactly, the tools.
They don't even have gloves.
So the tools are not there. The equipment I need to use to work at the University of Chicago. I cannot imagine, the hands-on training, I practically obtained from Professor, Richard Chalman. Richard Chalman is from JCVI. And this is one of the topmost institutes in the United States. It was brought to University of Chicago to train us. I interacted with him. He came to me. He even showed me a lot of things. So the tools we use then, are not readily available back home. People do sequencing here. They use next generation sequencer, the mini ion. Though we have some of those things. For instance, we have the what is it called? We have Sanger sequencer. We have the Illumina mini ion that was won by the Alexander von Humboldt scholar in my department, Professor Keo. But those things, can we maintain them? We do not have the consumables, the reagent. We are talking about reagent that runs into millions when we need to use them. I'm talking about reagents are the chemicals that we need. So we are talking about millions of naira to use in running each of the assays. But can we afford? Okay, let's even assume that the government is willing to buy some of those equipment, and they buy. But we have the budget to run, to procure a lot of those reagents that we'll be using on weekly basis, on monthly basis to train students. I can remember, at the Luxembourg Institute of Health, where I was trained at the WHO laboratory with Dr. Smukshanta and Professor Claude, Muller. I will run experiments, they will say, no, I need to go and repeat it again. I will use reagents. In fact, if I can just make you laugh, one of those days I said, oh, Prof, the reagents in my lab, they have, I've exhausted them. They said, what do I mean exhausted them? I shouldn't say that I should come around. They took me to the building at the back of the lab. It was a whole building stocked with reagents. And I was trying to say, wow. He said, no, here is not Africa. We've got everything that we'll use for the next 2-3 years. And I said, wow. And I have to get a trolley. I have to get a trolley and pack all of them back to my own lab. It's like a warehouse at the back of, the lab where I was working. So the point is that the reagents are not readily there. Then the power outage is a big, nightmare. Then water supply, in the university, there was, the water is, we've run out of water or something. Then the traffic, the road network, all of that. To now talk about the pay, yes, a major issue to brain drain, has got to do with the pay. The pay is nothing. The payment for a virologist here in the US, for a month is what I take for a year. I've been my people here, they've been driving me around with Range Rover, they've been taking me around with a brand new Mercedes Benz, all of which I don't have access to in my country. So it means if I have the opportunity as well, I'm going to, but because of the love some of us have for, the passion, the love we have for our job, for the country, some of us may need to stay back home, or something. But at the long run, I must tell you the truth. If people get scholarship, if people get job opportunities, we cannot keep them because of the, ILO rule that I've said earlier on, the International Labour Organization, mobility of labor. You cannot keep people back when you are not willing to give them, what they need to do, what they are meant to do. So it's the absolute truth. But we'll continue to try our best, coming and going, going and coming, so that all of us don't leave the the country. So over to you. Thank you. I don't know if I've addressed all of the points.
You really have, and I want to thank you for your time on this live today. I really do not want to keep you for too long because you really gave me the squeeze time out for us to talk to us, and we want to congratulate you once again. We want to say all the best, and we look forward to seeing you back in Nigeria, in Lagos. I would like to meet you so that you can show me around, you can show me some of these things too, so that you won't just use everything over there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I must thank the management of my university. I must thank the experts, the professors, the University of Maryland, the Global Virus Network, Professor Robert Gallo, Professor Boch, and the rest of them, Richard Chalman, a lot of them at the University of Chicago as well. Dr. Malik, and several other eminent personalities. I must also appreciate, my family, here in Texas, who have been, supportive as well. Mr. Semi Anjorin, Dr. Ismail Adesanya. These are Nigerians that are doing well. Engineer Bello Anjorin. These are Nigerians that are doing well. Here in the United States, they be supportive, because even if you have all what you need, you still need to move around. You need, support. You need, a lot of things. So I must thank them so much. And to also thank my students, members of my lab, my postgraduate students, professors in my faculty, the dean of my faculty, and other eminent, Nigerians, and of course the, Objectv for giving me the opportunity, to be able to come, live. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
So, LASU students, Lagos State University students, can you? Are you proud? I'm very sure you're proud of Dr. Anjorin, and then most of you want to be like him. So, watch out for him. He'll be coming to Lagos very soon to come and be teaching you once he's done with his fellowship program in the United States. So, thank you so much, Dr. Anjorin. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate. Thank you so much. I appreciate. All the best. Thank you.